we have a lot going on, and so your host here, David Tulis, and Carol Gaddy,
wrapping up.
We have a lot to get to. So, Carol Gaddy, talk quickly.
Yes.
Now, you are the woman who spent 18 days in 2 jails defending property rights. Tell us what happened and why my listeners should care about what you've done as in a way, a representative of you, the listener.
David, that's 19 days. I counted every hour of the entire 19 days. As you said, I'll be 70 years old in a few months. I've managed to live my entire life without doing anything criminal, and therefore I've never totally unfamiliar with the jail system, the legal system, anything about it until this trouble started. But we cannot, listen, if we don't take this stand and if we don't have the victory and if we fail to succeed in this, they're coming after you. I'm saying what happened to me and my husband, totally just enjoying our property and making our property beautiful, were harassed this way. And if these socialistic, communistic, municipal corporations decide they want to target you, the same thing can happen to you. So we must succeed in this private property rights fight, standing on our Constitution and our God-given rights that he is protecting us. Okay, fast forward, because I gave some of the beginning details. I told you when this case should have ended in November 2016, which was the first time I went to jail. Okay, I've been jailed 3 times. That's mugshots, fingerprinted. My husband has been jailed twice. And all of this jailing has been illegal. This is a part of the threats and intimidation. Well, after this time, they see that they're losing it. They're losing the battle on the civil front, which they filed against us. And now they've decided to get creative and file criminal charges against us. So what that amounts to is my husband and I are going under 4 judges in 4 different cases. We are still handling, this is very tough. So pray for us. We need your prayers to handle, we're neither one trained lawyers. We're going up against lawyers, insurance lawyers, a friend of the mayor named Gary Smith that operates Diesel Off-Road Technology, attacked me on December the 5th, ran up behind me and literally attacked me as I turned and stuck my arm out, my right hand, and said, stop. He hit me very hard. Then he went up to Saudi Daisy Police Department and took out charges of aggravated assault against me. He also filed another civil suit. This man is a longtime fishing buddy of Dwayne Land in Dunlap. So we're trying to pray about this situation over the next 3 days. And what should we do about this happening? And I will say this. I have never been attacked by a man in my entire life. Then that was December the 5th, 2016. By the evening of December the 8th, 3 days later, my husband receives his first physical attack upon him when a Sequatchie County deputy, 4 hours after dark, and I was already in the bed, says he's there with warrants for our arrest. He failed to show the warrant. I asked to see the warrant. Our gate was locked. He took bolt cutters, locked that gate, came rushing through, and jumped on my husband, Thomas. And that's where the aggravated assault on him. So both he and I have been the victims of aggravated assault.
And you are charged with assault.
Yes. And fortunately, when we went to the arraignment and preliminary hearing at the Saudi Daisy, and now remember, Saudi Daisy is in Hamilton County. And that's how these cases happen to be coming into the criminal court in Hamilton County. Well, that and also a civil lawsuit that Gary Smith filed at the same time. His whole intent was so out of the ordinary, we decided to do some research. And lo and behold, we find out he's an old-time fishing buddy of Dwayne Land, the mayor of Dunlap, and their neighbors on Saudi Lake tributary. So that's the circumstances. And as my husband mentioned before, now the administrative, based on the new law that we worked with our General Assembly to get passed, and everybody in Tennessee can benefit from this new law, because frankly, in the case of Dunlap, they annexed, they created an ordinance and a boundary description and dropped it. They never finished and completed a legal annexation of all these property owners. And the law states, and this is 44 years after the fact, they owe all these property owners all their city taxes back for 44 years plus interest. And I hope some people in Dunlap are hearing this, because we've been so tied up in court and in jails, we haven't been able to get in our community and really get the word out. But that's the current circumstances. The case in Sequatchie County is going before the grand jury on September the 25th.
Is that the case against you?
That is the case against Thomas and I. In Sequatchie County, they decided to, I'll back up. In Soddy Daisy Court, we had a good judge. He listened to our testimony. He looked at our motion to dismiss. And the DA, Strong, that was there, is the one that insisted on carrying this case forward into Hamilton County and threatened me face to face and said, I'm going to send you to prison for 3 years. Well, the judge decreased the charges in that court to simple assault, which is from a felony to a misdemeanor. But it is still a case moving forward into the Hamilton County Court on September the 27th. Now, like I said, that's 2 dates that I've given. We will be the grand jury on the criminal charges over there. In other words, coming toward Hamilton County, the criminal charges have been being reduced. But towards Sequatchie County, they've been increasing the criminal charges, because over there, the deputy charged us. The deputy who cut our gate, he enacted property damage. He enacted assault with a deadly weapon upon Thomas Gaddy, my husband. He files charges against us of resisting arrest. In other words, he seems to think that his criminal actions against us, and that is Deputy Kraft of Sequatchie County Sheriff's Department, that his criminal activity upon us, and we're the victim here, then he's going to charge us with resisting arrest. That's his excuse for attacking us and destroying our
I think the point needs to be, before we get lost in the details, Carol Gaddy, is that these are harassing cases that are attached like pilot fish on the body of a shark to the larger attack, and that has been civilly against you. And these, since you've resisted, these other cases have been stirred in the criminal venue against you.
Well, we filed.
They're unrelated, but they're harassing cases nonetheless.
Just in case there's any lawyers listening, when this came up in court in March, we filed into the court file. We have been told many times by judges, only what's in this file folder is going to count. Nothing you say in this courtroom. So we filed waiving our rights to the preliminary hearing and passing it to the grand jury back in March. Well, that was not good enough for the judge, Austin, over there. He decided he wanted to pile another criminal charge on us of failure to appear. So when they took me to their jail and brought me before him, he levied another. I want to mention this. Our wonderful son, Kelly Gaddy, and many people in Chattanooga know this wonderful carpenter, because he's done work in your homes. You know his integrity. You know he's a Christian young man. Well, he's 50, but he's young to me. I'm mom. Anyway, he has spent over $2,000 of his hard-earned money just buying his mother and father out of jail through bonding companies, so we can still have our liberty and live in our home and walk around and still do our legal work. It's against the code of ethics to lock up and incarcerate the entire defense team, but yet these judges and lawyers, it doesn't matter to them. Well, we are the defense team.
This is David Tulis. We're talking with Carol Gaddy, who has been a civil defendant in the property rights case in Dunlap and Sequatchie County. Carol, what does my listener need to know about defending his rights? Should he defend his rights, or should he yield to maintain peace and equanimity to avoid court action? How important is it to maintain his rights and to defend them vigorously as you have? Because you've been you've been a belligerent claimant in person, which I think is the right term to describe someone like you.
David, it is so very important. You've heard the old saying, if you don't use it, you'll lose it. And I'm telling you, if we people of the state of Tennessee do not stand up and use our voice and speak out for ourselves, that we have a constitutional right, and our U.S. Supreme Court had decided years ago that pro se people, there's self-represented litigants have a right to use the courts that our tax dollars pay for across this country. And even though you're facing hostile lawyers, hostile judges, they mock, they laugh at you, they make jokes about you. If you would just continue to stand up, take your place, when the Supreme Court says you've got a right to use these courts across this land, and in that opinion, it states that these courts are not supposed to discriminate against you as you do defend yourself in the courts. This is very important. We need to all participate.
This is David Tulis and Carol Gaddy. Thank you so much for joining my listener and me here at Nooga Radio. We've been talking with Carol Gaddy. We've also heard from her husband, Thomas. They've been through a very difficult 2 years of life, and that is they have been defending their right to property. They've been defending their right to have their property free from search and seizure apart from a warrant, and that's what was lacking in a civil action against them, where the pretense was our municipal necessity requires us to search your property, and we don't have a criminal warrant. We're not alleging anything criminal, but we are going to search your property. I have now in the studio a man on another topic you might say it's somewhat related, and it is for the work here in the Hickson area for cleaner water. We have water coming through the pipes from Hickson Utility District. David Tulis here.
I'd like to know, Carol's still there?
No. What's on your mind, please? I need to move on.
Carol's still there?
No, she's left. Okay. We're talking with Heath Martyr, who is overseeing Save Chattanooga. The effort of this young man, 29 years old, is to have Hickson Utility District eliminate fluoridation from its practices. The injection of fluoride drops into the water supply from a very fine aquifer under North Chattanooga. This process is called fluoridation, and it is the use of hydrofluorosilicic acid that is ostensibly that is put in for the purported and stated reason of hardening the enamel of young children in the 3 to 7-year-old bracket. Heath, tell us about the meeting that you attended Friday with the board, the monthly meeting of the board of Hickson Utility District. What happened there? What kind of reception did you receive for your requests and demands?
Well, I was received relatively well by board members and General Manager Greg Butler. The purpose of going to the meeting was to share some new information we've learned in regards to fluoride. This has been the third meeting that we've attended now. Repeatedly, we've asked for the chemical breakdown of the hydrofluorosilicic acid compound used, which we call fluoride. So the meeting, we did an off-the-record meeting in hopes to, sway board members to make a good decision, the safe call to eliminate fluoride itself. Now, some of the questions that we asked them, just kind of give y'all a breakdown of how the meeting went. First, we asked them again if they had the full breakdown of the hydrofluorosilicic acid, and is it available to residents? In response, Greg Butler told me that
director or the manager.
Yeah, he's the general manager. Correct, David. He told me that yes, by publicly asking for the chemical breakdown, he would provide it to us. He said he had already provided it to local realtor Harriet Cash. After the meeting, I spoke with Harriet. She emailed me the documents that he had sent her, and it was not an actual breakdown of the fluoride. So we're still at issue there and still trying to get that information. So we also asked for the toxicological reports. We weren't able to receive those.
Wait, toxicological?
Yes.
Is that reports on toxicity?
Yes. Studies that show fluoride, hydrofluorosilicic acid is safe. They weren't able to provide any of this information. We've been looking at the TCS lately for the state of Tennessee. And if you pull up the TCS.
TCA. Tennessee Code Annotated.
Thank you, sir. If you pull that up under Section 69, Chapter 3, Article 114, it blatantly says, as a law, they must provide us with such information due to water quality. So that's going to be our next step. If we can't get the answers we're looking for, we'll obviously have to take legal measure. So other questions that were asked, as the board members were aware that we switched to an industrial grade of fluoride. To the listener, you can get several grades. A pharmaceutical grade, which is tested. An industrial grade fluoride is not tested. So they didn't answer that question. I asked General Manager Greg Butler if he was aware that hydrofluorosilicic acids contain metals that are proven to cause health problems. In response to that, he did say yes, that he was aware of that. I asked a couple of questions about hydrofluorosilicic acid in regards to how it works in reference to preventing cavities. We are under the assumption from all the research that we've done that it kills cavities by killing cavity-causing bacteria, which in our opinion is unnecessary due to chlorination, which kills all the bacteria in the water. We questioned General Manager Greg Butler about this, and he was unable to provide us with a clear answer. So, and basically at the end of it, we asked them, if HUD trust the NSF as a good source for information.
All right, NSF is what? Again?
That is the National Science Foundation. It's the major science foundation over the United States of America. So, and they honestly didn't respond to that. So, basically, what I was trying to share with them is there's some new information that we now have at our hands that we did not have in December when they cast their vote to continue fluoridation. And I can just go over this briefly with the listener. If you type in NSF, hydrofluorosilicic acid, on Google, what was going to pull up is the National Science Foundation fact sheet on fluoridation. Pops up on the first page on the very, very top. And I'm going to read y'all directly off of this link some of the things that I found that have concerned me. There has been testing on hydrofluorosilicic acid by the NSF from 2000 to 2011. They tested 216 samples. And these chemicals that are in here are the chemicals that we are wanting to locate. It's the reason why we're asking for the chemical breakdown. Just a couple of these are barium was found in the solution, cadmium, chromium, copper, and lead, as well as mercury. The highest concentration of metals showing on this report that I'm looking at is, believe it or not, arsenic. Out of 216 tests, in over 50% of the tests, they did detect arsenic. And, at a level of 0.15 parts per billion on average, with as much as 0.6 parts per billion. And that might not sound like a lot, but 1 part per billion of lead is equivalent to the loss of 5 IQ points in children under 5, according to studies done by Harvard, Stanford, and etc., which lead's also in this stuff. So as far as arsenic goes, the EPA does allow 10 parts per billion of arsenic to be in the drinking water. And that does follow EPA code right there, which I think's a little ridiculous. And what that means to me is just because Hickson Utility District's water does pass EPA standards, I think they are a little lax, and I think we should hold ourselves to higher accountability than what the EPA is asking us to do.
And again, the thing reviewed, Heath Martyr, is the fluoride itself. Is that the point? You say 10 points per 10 parts per billion of arsenic and 0.15 parts per billion of lead. Arsenic is about 100 times more common than lead in that measurement.
Yes,
that's in the fluoride liquid itself.
These tests were done on the hydrofluorosilicic acid itself, and the maximum level detected, according to the NSF, for arsenic was 0.6 parts per billion. But the EPA has an allowable 10 parts per billion. Does that make sense, David? So they were well within EPA limits. Arsenic itself is one of the most toxic substances known to mankind. It's arguably the most toxic substance there is. Right behind that on a toxicity scale would be fluoride itself. And right under fluoride is mercury. So these are some of the most toxic substances in the world. And the hydrofluorosilicic acid that Hickson is using does contain all three substances, according to these reports. So it
contains lead, arsenic, and mercury. Did you give Heath Martyr the mercury level that's found by the NSF, the National Science Foundation?
It's very low. It is very low. The maximum concentration, and it is extremely low, is 0.04 parts per billion. But it is obviously does detectable. It is in the hydrofluorosilicic acid, according to the NSF. And other notable things that they found in there was radionuclides, alpha and beta. You can go over this same document that I'm sharing with you. They also have test results between 2000 and 2006. Another thing that I'm noting is if you go through here and look at the amounts of these substances from 2000 to 2006, every single one of them drastically increased from the next study from two. So it's getting more condensed.
My listener's asking about these parts per billion readings, Heath Martyr, and he thinks, well, the EPA says that these are acceptable. That means to say that the amounts are so small, so insignificant that even if you, the listener, drink this in, it can't affect your physiology or your health because it's almost undetectable. Now, that again, we're talking about parts per billion, not parts per million. So why are you more concerned than high-level scientists, well-paid scientists who have degrees and doctorates about this? That agency gives pass on these levels, and you're not buying that. Aren't you kind of expecting a lot from Hickson Utility District?
Yes. Well, I mean, I know, a lot of hype scientists are not saying this stuff will hurt us. But as we know, our government and organizations such as the ones that we're speaking of often use a misplay of words. And generally when it comes to drinking water, they will say that the water is safe. And what they're meaning by safe is it's not going to cause any harm today. So I'm not suggesting that drinking a gallon of this water in a day is going to kill you or hurt you today. But obviously these metals build up in your bones and brain over the long period.
And of course, those are public health. That's the public health perspective, which never looks at the individual. Public health always looks at the mass. And so what it does, it looks at masses of people, millions of people, and then parts per billion, parts per million, and it says, well, given that body of people, you're not going to have overall injury or damage, though in particular cases, you may have severe problems, neurological problems, perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So for instance, me drinking a glass of this is not going to affect, a 1-year-old as much. And it has been publicly known. Now our doctors do now tell parents after they've had a kid to not use tap water for their bottles due to the fluoride in it is obviously a lot more toxic to a baby than it is to a human being.
What do you make of bottled water, Heath Martyr? Safe? Unsafe?
Bottled water, in my opinion, is in a lot of cases is tap water. What I do know about bottled water for sure is that bottled water companies are not legally required to post their testing results. So they don't even have to tell us what's in their water. And if you read the back of a bottled water, the testing results are not on there. And the fact is that 4 or 5 bottled water companies do not make the substances in the water known to the public. And a bunch of tests have been done on bottled waters, and almost every brand out there does show fluoride in the water. It's in the bottled water.
You can see for yourself the graphic Heath Martyr is looking at, and that is at Nooganomics.com, and it points out from the Hickson Utility District's 2016 water quality report that the company, it's a quasi-governmental entity, offers discharge from fertilizer and aluminum factories as an additive in the water. So it's an honest admission about the source of fluoride. It is discharge from fertilizer and aluminum factories. In other words, it's industrial waste, an industrial waste product that's being given a new life in recycling in your tap. That is effectively what is happening in Hickson Utility District, and Heath Martyr is trying to stop that. Heath, thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me on the show, David.
David Tulis, Nooga Radio.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports leader. Nooga Radio. Digital FM 95.3.